My talk is when should you use Kamailio, and I'll introduce myself in just a minute, but we can end this very quickly because when should you use Kamailio? Tuesdays, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. UTC is the best time. Thank you very much. All right, as with all my presentations, ask a question, get a cookie. See you in AstroCon 2019. All joking aside, I'm Fred Posner. Twitter handle, same, Fred Posner. If you call me Posner, I'll probably respond, but I grimace. And then you can find me at qxork.com. And that's my beautiful wife, who's extremely pregnant right now, so she's not here because she's as big as I am. But I've been involved with Kamailio for many, many years, about 15 years or so, and Asterisk just about as long. Huge fan of both projects, and it's an extreme honor to be able to talk to you here today. Our agenda is kind of some questions. So first we'll try to answer what is Kamailio. I'm then going to try to do why Kamailio, the three S's, right? So we'll make sense when we get there. And then when Kamailio. So what is Kamailio, why Kamailio, and when should you use Kamailio? The goal here today, and we have a really great talk after mine as well from Daniel, one of the co-founders of Kamailio and our main developer. And he'll be extremely technical. My goal, piggybacking with him, is when you leave, you should be able to explain what Kamailio is, why you might need it, and convince everyone at your company as to why it should be deployed. So that's the goal here today. So what? And what is this word I keep saying? It's Kamailio. So this is how we pronounce it, spelled out there phonetically. Kamailio is an open source SIP server, and it's exactly that. Much like Asterisk, it's open source. Licensing is free as in beer. We can charge you as much as you'd like for licensing, but you don't have to pay. It's GPL. So Kamailio is an open source SIP server under GPL. It's basically it complies with RFC 3261 among a lot of other ones, but it acts as a true SIP proxy. And with that, we also have registration services, location services, SIP proxy, of course, SIP application, and redirect. You can use any of these or all of these. Some people will use it just as a SIP redirect. Anything from updating a call with caller ID to routing calls to anything like that, as well as a location server. So if you just want to handle registrations, if you just want to handle locations of your users, or if you just want to act as a security proxy or a SIP edge proxy. Kamailio is flexible. It's a very small footprint. Okay, I've run it on a Raspberry Pi. I don't recommend that for deployment in production, but it's a lot of fun. But it has a very small footprint and it has a modular architecture, which means you only load what you need to load, right? If you need something outside of the core of Kamailio, you load it, and there's over 150 modules for you to play with. And we're plug and play. So just by adding that module and configuring it, you can use it. We have an extremely capable system in terms of routing, so you can run stateless. You can run transactional stateful. You can run combinations. We have serial and parallel forking. It's a dream to use NAT with Kamailio. Absolute dream. If you were using Asterisk with the 1.2 and older, you had a lot of problems. I'm not seeing many of those problems with the newer versions, but using Kamailio in front ended any of those problems. And it's also a load balancer, which can do least cost routing, failover, replication, and anything to your heart's content. Again, in answering what is Kamailio, Kamailio helps you to provide security. So one of my favorite deploy aspects of Kamailio is as a SIP edge router. There's a whole debate that we can get into as to whether or not Kamailio is an SBC or not. And I like to refer people to an article that Alex Balashoff wrote on it as to, what is an SBC anyway. So taking aside from there, basically any of the security aspects of an SBC that you want, Kamailio can handle. And that could be TLS, SRTP, digest, DB authentication, radius, diameter, perimeter, IP auth, etc. So many that one of those I just made up, right? Perimeter is not really a true method, right? Diameter and radius is, but I just had fun. We offer asynchronous processing. IP and DNS features include SRV records, DNS, enum, blacklists. We can be multi-domain, multi-home, topology hiding, which is a great aspect if you are considering using it as an SBC replacement. We can handle all of your accounting and make it centralized. It can be event. You configure it how you would like, each of your multi-legs, and we can also incorporate with a prepaid engine. And anything in terms of those. And the extensibility of Kamailio allows you to customize your SIP in the same way that Asterisk allows you to customize what you handle with media, right? So one of my favorite things that came out recently is Chemi, which Dan Jenkins gave a talk, I think 2 years ago, that saying that your next phone developer is a web developer. So if you have someone that's very good in Java, Squirrel, Python, not Perl, but Python and some other ones, you can have them integrate directly with Kamailio. So you don't have to use the Kamailio configuration. They can write in Python just as they would normally. They could write in JavaScript as they would normally and integrate it in that way. We connect to databases. I'm a huge proponent of using databases. I love using databases, and pretty much any solution I do is heavily database oriented. And you can connect to however you want with a database using Kamailio or not. If you don't want to use a database, you don't have to. And that's how, one of the reasons why I like Kamailio is you can use it the way you want to use. So instead of your business trying to work towards this software, the software allows you to integrate into your business the way that you want to. What isn't Kamailio? Well, we're not a media server, we're not a B2B UA or a back-to-back user agent, and we're not a PBX. But we're at Astricon, so hopefully everyone is familiar with something that meets all three of those features, and that would be Asterisk, right? And so we come in and help Asterisk and let Asterisk do what it does best. So why Kamailio? Well, one way is that you could work towards scalability. Okay, and this is the first S of the many S's that I was talking about. I have the Hulk up because the Hulk to me is the true example of scalability. As the Hulk gets angrier, he gets bigger. As he stops being angry, he gets smaller. That's the exact kind of scalability that we want. So if you were running a small system, an embedded system, you could run hundreds of calls per second on Kamailio. It wouldn't be unheard of. If you're running stateless, 5,000 call setups per second wouldn't be out of the world. So I mean, that's a little bit more than you're probably doing with a single Asterisk box. If you had 4 gigs of RAM, we'd expect you to handle about 300,000 subscribers or so. Okay, so 300,000 endpoints or, you know, different nodes of the same endpoint, that kind of stuff. We can run geo-distributed, which is a great way of handling things because we have a method of communicating. And we offer failover and redundancy. So all of these together helps make your solution extremely scalable, right? One goes down, you're still going. If you need to add more, you can add more. N+1 architecture is one of my favorite things about Kamailio. There's no better photo than this for phone security, in my opinion. Another Y for Kamailio is security. So we have scalability, we also have security, right? So if you want to do an action based on what is inside that SIP message, you have that ability with Kamailio. So if I want to block something based on a user agent or a user itself or an IP or anything I can grab from that SIP message, I can do that with Kamailio. It's that amazing at reading SIP. IP authentication is a normal method that we would use for security. You can use different authentication resources such as a database, radius. I'm not going to throw in perimeter this time. LDAP, and now with LDAP, it also kind of works with Active Directory. We have a Pike module built into Kamailio that when activated will automatically help you with anti-flooding. So when you start getting some attacks, or a user agent that, anyone read what Tim Patton put on about this little gecko that got on the touch screen and started making calls out of Hawaii? Kamailio can help you stop those annoying calls. And you can share this distributed. So if you're attacking one, you can attack them all, right? So kind of a NATO approach to security with your Kamailio deployment. And the third S is stability. Okay, Kamailio, this just to me breeds stability. I mean, it's just peace with the earth, right? And well, in this case, not really earth, right? But for high availability, you have stability. If I wanted to do the failover or redundancy, that gives me stability, and it could be, you know, single location or distributed across the globe. And one of my favorite features that we have is a module called HTable, which is a memory stored table. And this also distributes among many Kamailios. So let's say you were deploying Kamailios on each side of the country, or in multiple nodes of your own data center, right? If something I do in one automatically goes to another one. So I can, whether that be user registration. So if a user registers on one, the other node already knows all that user is registered and where they are. And this kind of aspect really helps you keep a stable deployment should something goes wrong. And that's the whole point of stability, right? So the whole reason why we're here is when. So we have all this information. When should you deploy Kamailio? Well, I like to think of the Chinese proverb, right? So the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So I think the best time to use Kamailio is when you start your deployment. If you haven't, that's okay. Let's start today then. I think the best time for you to use Kamailio is now. Everyone that launches an Asterisk box and puts it on the internet is seeing that you're getting attacked, right? In just no time, you're going to have people just connect to the open internet and throw some registration attempts, throw some calls, not even knowing if you have a SIP server out there. They're just hoping you do, and when you do, then they're just going and going and going, right? I mean, they're just killing you. So something like Kamailio will help you with that out of the box. Your typical deployment for Kamailio would just be to be in front of your one or maybe two Asterisk boxes and the internet. So just put it in before your Asterisk box gets the SIP, let Kamailio inspect what the Asterisk is going to see, reject what it shouldn't. Okay, and then as you grow, we talk about some of that scalability. If it's already there, growing is no problem. Okay, it's easy as just adding more nodes. And you can have different aspects do different things. I might have, let's say, the first row here be conferences. The three behind it, those are our main phone calls and for call recordings. And maybe the last two are voicemail servers. Okay, and Kamailio is smart enough to know which call should go to where and handle it accordingly. If you're getting too many conferences, just add one more. Kamailio will now start sending it to 3 instead of 2. Things like that. When you just launch your Asterisk server, you might start seeing something like this. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, but this is just your typical, rejecting of calls that coming in. If you look at all this, this is 1 second. Okay, so all this happened in 1 second, and again, that's all that could fit in the screenshot. Believe me, there were more. So this is just an example of what would happen with Kamailio or with Asterisk, right? And if anyone's seen this, when you have a hit that's this high, your CPU starts rising, right? And you're like, hey, I only have one call. Why is my CPU at 98? And that's because some guy found out that you're responding negatively to a registration, and they're just going to continue hitting you and hitting you and hitting you. Well, Kamailio will block something like that right out of the gate. In our default configuration, we have a block that says if the user agent, and that's what that $UA means, is like friendly scanner, which is your default for SIP vicious, or SIP CLI, which you see all the time, or VAX SIP user agent, send them a 200 and just exit. Okay, so they're going to go, oh, here's a call. You're going to send them a 200 okay, and exit. Why do you send them a 200 okay? Well, if you're running TCP or something like that, it can also close it out. Also, I used to not. I would just drop it, just ignore it. And Daniel's like, no, you should do it. You should do the 200. And, darn it if I didn't test it. And he was right. The attacks stop quicker when you send them a 200. Because if I'm sending a call and I send you a 200 and then you start trying to send calls out to me, but they're just dying, you're going to go somewhere else, right? So it's really an effective way of stopping them. But doing something like this with Kamailio, here I was hitting it with 500 calls per second. And this Kamailio was using 0.7, 0.8, it was combining a few of the CPUs. My entire CPU usage on all 4 cores was 4% out of 400. Not really bad. The highest CPU use was using top to get this screenshot, right? And this is 500 calls per second. What makes this more impressive is that this was actually the Raspberry Pi. So you start running a real system, you're going to get some real good results. Now, when you want more security, instead of just sending a 200 to each one, what you can do is you go, you know what, I'm going to send a 200, and then I'm going to add this to an H table, which is that memory table that I talked about. And I'm going to say, you know what, I want to ban this IP. Because I don't now want this person to go, okay, well, sending calls failed, let me now try registrations. Okay, or let me try, anything else. Let me try options and just wait until the guy starts, sending me something differently. So at that point, I could just go, okay, you know what, I'm going to ban this IP. And so the shared hash table tag there, I'm going to say, okay, I'll make a table called IP ban. And I'm going to take that IP address, which is what the SI variable means. I'm going to set it to 1. At that point, if I went to the anti-flood section on the right, it's going to go, okay, as long as the source IP isn't myself, because let's face it, I could have fun and then make this computer ban itself by, haha, because I'm evil. But, so let's check that I'm not just playing with it. So as long as it's not myself, if that source IP address has a value, then I'm just going to go ahead and exit. I'm just going to ignore it. So I'm going to stop responding to any of the things. And you could put anything you wanted there. You could do the 200 okay, or you could just go and, you know what, stop. I'm stopping this attack as much as I can. And this is just one example of using these two items together, right? So in one aspect, I've now taken an attack on a phone call or a user registration. I've now prevented them from doing anything else on my system. Okay, and I'm not having to do the high resource intensive of, fail to ban or something like that. It's just built in, it's a memory table, it's fantastic. And I've prevented everything from behind that Kamailio from getting hit. So it's not just one asterisk box, it's everything behind it. I can block SQL injection. So I can look through, let's say, the authorized username and see if they're doing it. If you've looked at your SIP logs, I mean, there's PHP injection, there's SQL injection, the things that they are using as SIP now to try to destroy your system are absolutely amazing. The SQL injection is important to me because of my heavy use of databasing. And so because of that, you just, I'm looking for SQL injection. Here's an example of just for the auth user, but you could do anything with it. And then look, if you're going to send me something like that, I'm just going to block you. I can use IP authentication. So for example, I can add IP addresses to lists. So I can go, okay, if allow source address is in the group 688, which is just DTMF or OUT, so outbound, then I'm going to let them make an outbound call. Right, on inbound, which is DTMF for 46, right? If the allow source address is in this group of people that can make an inbound call, I'm going to let them make it. If not, I might block them. You can combine the scalableness with security. So we talked about the H table, right? So I have authentication of requests, right? So when a user comes in, I'm going to authenticate them, right? I'm going to look up whether this, whether it's with LDAP or database or local list, however you're doing it. I'm going to look up something. I'm going to take resources to identify if a user and their password match, right? Well, that has a cost, and especially if I'm doing a lot of user registrations. So what I can do here is do that lookup once, and then remember it for maybe 15 minutes, an hour, whatever you want, and just store that information in memory. Okay, so just in this H table, I'll store what their hash password is. Okay, and that way, when it comes in, okay, look, I'm going to look up, I'm going to check if this person has already checked before, and he has, so as long as it matches the value I have in memory, now they're authenticated. So it's an extremely quick and efficient way of running a lot of users. The more users you add to Asterisk, you've probably noticed, wow, you know, I'm seeing less performance, and that's because of the overhead of doing all this user registration. Okay, on Kamailio, honestly, if I'm running 100, 1,000, 2,000 users, you're not really going to see a ton of difference here because, you know, it's efficient anyway. But when I'm running 300,000, or I'm running, you know, I have them set because they're all natted to register every minute. So I'm running 1,000 a minute. Doing something like this in memory is just amazing performance. You know, some of the other things that we can use for scalability is a DMQ, which is a distributed message queue, right? And so we can distribute H table, we can distribute locations, and we have, you know, you can integrate with RabbitMQ or just MQ itself, which is a module within Kamailio. You can use DMQ by itself to distribute whatever you would like, because again, we're all about customization here. But so if I think about it with that H table, or if I think about user location, by this replication, if I've registered on one, I can now distribute that to every single Kamailio that I have deployed. So if I'm running multiple data centers, and you know, the agent or the users are registering wherever the closest one may be to them, well, it comes in, registers, and now that gets distributed to all of them. So if this data center goes down, and now with DNS it goes somewhere else, or their ISP hiccups and now they're registering to another Kamailio, it already knows where they are. So the call's still going to make it to them. Or even better, I can use that for my security H table. So if you've attacked one data center, the others have already been blocking it. So when they move on to the next one, their information is already blocked. I don't have to wait for that attack to happen. I can proactively block and prevent my problems from happening before they happen, in theory. So the best time to use Kamailio is when you first deploy. Okay, and so if you're coming up with a new way of doing it, install Kamailio. There's very few times I don't install Kamailio now. Second best time is right now. So if you haven't deployed Kamailio before in the past, don't worry about it. You can deploy it now. We can get it going. You can talk to people. Now could just start off with a conversation. Doesn't mean you have to download it quick and easy from GitHub and deploy immediately. You know, you could get to know and start the process moving. I do have one more why, and I try to leave, because again, this one isn't as technical as we like, so I like to leave a lot of time here open for questions and audience interaction. Again, Daniel's right after me as well. But the one more why is, you know, why am I even here today, right? And so I'm really mad at Simon for kind of stealing my thunder. Didn't realize he was doing that in his keynote. But one of the big things I'm here is because I love this community. Okay, I am extremely honored to be part of this community for the past 15 years. Astricon is, you know, my wife is extremely pregnant at home, and she knew that I'm coming here. Okay, I come to Astricon. I love it here. This is a happy place. To be among all of you is just, it's fun. It's fun to talk about this stuff. It's fun to be in a community of really smart people who are just doing amazing things out there with software that I can learn from. And so I love being here to learn from you. I love being here to share with you. And I just love this community. I also love the products that we're working on, right? Asterisk is an amazing software. And the changes that have happened, in the new releases. It just keeps getting better and better. And usually when I leave Astricon, I'm really excited to go start playing with something. Okay, I saw something that's really neat. The video stuff still scares me because I'm kind of old, but I want to play with it, And I know that you guys can love this as much as I do. And so that's why I'm here. And I'm just really excited to share that with you and to be part of the community. And I thank you for letting me be a part of it. There's my wife who can't be here. And as you can see, I'm just a fancy dresser wherever we go. As always, with my presentations, my wife and I started a bakery back in 2010. So we have cookies. So if you ask a good question, you get a cookie, because there's no other better way. And then since it's Astricon, we have both Asterisk cookies and we have Kamailio cookies. And so with that, I know Jared's going to walk around the mic, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred. That's why you are the nicest guy in Boyd.
Oh.
All right, questions. I'm sure people have some questions for Fred.
I just did a huge setup. Okay, all right.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you expand on the idea of Kamailio versus an SBC? What would be a typical?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure that's deep.
And I'm not going to take the expansion comment as a fat joke. No, just kidding. All right. Sure. So I'm going to paraphrase again. Alex Balashoff did a great article. So just Google it when we're all done, or come by the Kamailio booth sometime, and we'll share the location of it. But in essence, is there really a definition of SBC? And there's not a set definition of one. It's kind of been a marketing term that's evolved over time. But now if you bring a consensus of a lot of people who are experts in this, the items that they'll come up with is basically it can do security, it can do accounting, it can do, different aspects of that. Some of the things that it can do is transcoding, back-to-back user agent, which we can have a great argument as to whether or not that is actually any security in a back-to-back user agent whatsoever, and maybe call interception for law enforcement. And so they'll come up with all of those things. So in of itself, Kamailio does not do transcoding. However, Kamailio as a SIP proxy integrates with media proxy RTP engine as well as RTP proxy right out of the shelf extremely easily. And in our default configurations, it has that configuration. RTP engine itself can do transcoding. So can Asterisk. So the transcoding part you can move off to Asterisk, right? The B2B UA. Kamailio can do what we call topology hiding. It can also do topology stripping, but it can do topology hiding where it's hiding all of your topology, which, honestly, 99 times out of 100 will cover what you need for a B2B UA. The only thing that really doesn't get protected is call ID, but there's ways of handling that too. And this being said, it will handle 99%. If you don't feel comfortable or you have people that are just him and haws over it, well, Asterisk has a B2B UA in it, right? So you can put that aspect into Asterisk and problem solved. And then lawful interception, you can either do with Asterisk or you can split using RTP engine in different ways and go for that. So the main aspects of what changes, this is great, this is a huge cookie question, probably 2 cookies. So what would be the differences between the two are pretty much the transcoding and the B2B UA, and the fact that maybe it's not a proprietary hardware device, But other than that, the way I got into Kamailio in the first place was replacing an Acme packet before it was Oracle with Kamailio. The short story of it is we had a thundering herd. Anybody know what a thundering herd is, or anybody not know? All right, so a thundering herd is when you have, let's say, multiple internet carriers like we did that get cut. So you lose all of your fail-silver carriers, and you're just dead in the water. And when you come back up, all of your users are trying to register at the same time. So that thundering herd of users trying to register to you just knocks it down. And our Acme Pac-Man couldn't handle it. And we had less than 5,000 users. We just could not handle it with Acme Packet. We had the gold or whatever that equivalent level subscription was, and it was going to take about 48 hours for them to get to our case. Well, we would have lost all of our clients, right? So at that point, we downloaded and installed Kamailio, and I mean, they all registered to the point where we didn't think it was working. You know, we're like, oh, because they were all registered. We just didn't get that because 5,000 for Kamailio really isn't like, oh, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, bless your heart, you know, but so, I mean, it just worked out of the goal, and so we were just fantastically in love with the product ever since. So, no, it's not truly an SBC. It's absolutely a SIP edge router that's fantastic at security, and I continue to continually replace SBCs with Kamailio. All right, I have some cookies for you. There's a question right behind.
Right here.
Is the Kamailio cookie open source? Can I fork it with chocolate chips?
You can fork it with chocolate chips. Funny enough, the recipe has been posted in the Homer GitHub, and it's written in Kamailio config style. So you're going to have to learn Kamailio, and then you could bake it. And there's, you know, if statements in there, like if it's too hot to touch, you know, how you handle it. So the recipe for the cookies are open source. That's a cookie question.
One over here.
Thank you. Can I use Kamailio to add SIP TLS and SRTP to my endpoints out in the world and not have to do that on my legacy PBX?
Yes. So in essence, can I have one leg that's TLS and SRTP and one leg that's not?
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, it's a cookie question, but yes, yes, you can, and you can do that. You could also do TCP on one end. One of my favorite things is you could do IPv6 on one end and IPv4 on the other. So any of those types of bridging you can do with Kamailio or set up with Kamailio. Yes, sir.
I still use a lot of my locations. I still use like AT&T Flex line. I don't have them hand me SIP. I have them hand me PRI. So that necessarily wouldn't help here. But I've been having a lot of issues trying to get like to newer versions of Asterisk with some of my smaller locations. Would this help having that in front, having the clients register there? Would that be a way of maybe having like an 11 and a 13 Asterisk behind it at the same time and slowly moving people's over to the other newer version? And
All right, so
does that help stage it better than having to like have everybody go to a whole new server to register, you know, and then fail back, you know, when it doesn't work?
There's a lot of moving parts to that question, so I'm going to try to do my best here. All right, so you have PRI, and if you have to upgrade that or do anything with that, you really don't want to affect and have to go with agents and, you know, change everything. Yeah. Right. Even if it's not on the internet, it still works on a LAN just as well, right? So one of the reasons would be for security, but the other one is stability, right? So that's just one of the other S's. So yeah, absolutely. I could have the Kamailio there and have my agents register, and then even if I have to take off the PRI for maintenance or whatever, my users aren't going to red light. They're not going to know that their registration is down because they're not affected by that system that's doing that. So then you could do your modifications to that Asterisk box or whatever you needed behind the scenes and still not impact those agents. In fact, you could transfer their calls to maybe a different Asterisk that's up at the same time. Yep. Absolutely, that would be a great use scenario. And cookies.
I'm glad you mentioned the IPv6. I get nervous about that, and that's a good solution.
I really hope to retire before it was a thing. Yeah.
So, two questions. Do you foresee being a good front end to Switchvox as a product, and what level of expertise is needed in-house to install and manage it?
Okay, so two questions, one cookie. Can it be a front end to Switchvox? I don't see why it couldn't. However, I don't have enough experience with Switchvox to tell you the details of how to do that. There might be others, and we have a Kamailio booth in the expo, So come by, meet with us. Daniel might have some more, or any of us might have worked with SwitchVox in that aspect more than I have. I don't see how it couldn't, because at the very least, you could have it stand in front and do some forwarding straight to SwitchVox. So it could just be a protection, so you can handle all the security aspects and things like that. In that aspect, how the easy question is very difficult to answer, right? So how difficult is it to deploy Kamailio? I think you need to really know SIP. And when I say really know, you need to start being familiar with SIP to understand the concepts of Kamailio, because Kamailio deals with SIP. But I don't find it harder than, let's say, it was to learn Asterisk, okay, or something like that. It's something new. So if you're trying to deploy it in a quick amount of time, it's going to be painful. But if you give yourself time to familiarize yourself with the product, play around with it in a lab, use the default configuration, which is heavily commented, so that you can see, okay, here's where this is coming, here's where this is coming. So if you give yourself time to expose yourself to that and to learn it and to make sense, I think you're going to have a great time. We're also a really friendly community. We have a mailing list where people are all the time helping each other. We're very active on IRC, as same as Asterisk is. We really try to be a friendly group, so we don't like to, you won't see any flame wars or anything like that. You'll see a lot of, we're a global product, so we do have a lot of people that don't speak English as a first language, and so a lot of us have learned to be patient, because, remember, if they're speaking English and it's not their first language, they're smart enough to know at least 2 languages. But it's a fun group that wants to help you and wants everybody to succeed. So, a couple others.
Is PJSIP compatible, mainly registering multiple contacts back to the same extension on Asterisk?
Absolutely. Is PJSIP compatible? 100%. Is multiple endpoints to the same user compatible? Yes. Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the benefits, like if you were using this with free PBX, that's an immediate benefit, is that you can run a soft phone and a hard phone. On Kamailio, have them register as the same user.
Do you recommend, what kind of hardware do you recommend for it? A VM or a physical box?
I haven't had any problems with running it on VM. When I'm running VMs, I normally use ESX, or the VMware servers itself. We've had issues with running any type of Linux on the Microsoft virtualization. People are running it in AWS. I have clients in AWS that are running it without a problem. On the SIP aspect, personally, I don't have a preference. RTP is still something that's getting better virtualized, but if you do have a preference, I am going to recommend a physical server for RTP every single time. But that being said, probably the majority of my clients are not. They are virtualized even with the RTP, but the recommendation is still physical is the way to go on RTP, especially when you're high volume. And several of the carriers in here that are running these products will even talk about how they're running it still on physical today. Oh, there's a couple more in the back.
Quick question about external usage. We talked about, you support messaging bus, use the database. What if I had to say, because I actually use it now a little bit, but I'm using the default config.
Okay.
Really. So just front ending it, keeping, like you said, it's mostly just keeping the nasty mayflies out.
Yeah.
But I want to have more. I want to have the expandability. I want to be able to have that horizontal expandability. So we're not shoving too many clients in one box. But external authentication. Now, say if I've got 3 or 4 Asterisk boxes, even just one. If I can, I typically will maintain all of my authentication information in Asterisk in real time. For as external, would it be able to possible to use? Is there some, built-in support in Kamailio to use an external authentication other than that? Because it's not radius, it's not diameter, it's not LDAP, but it's just, it would
right. Well,
am I able to talk to like give it, say, hey, this is my database authentication schema.
Right, yes. So there are examples as well on Asipto.com has examples of some of the older versions of Asterisk and Kamailio, but it's the same principles of using the Asterisk database and just telling Kamailio which is the user field, which is the password field. So if you used a database for Asterisk and run it in real-time mode or just use the database backend, you can do that same config in that. Kamailio supports almost anything for authentication, including APIs. So you can run whatever process you want to get the password. You can then match it with however you want. So the quick answer is yes. You can authenticate it however you'd like. And the mechanics of how you get there might change. But if you're running it with Asterisk, I think the quickest way to do that would be to just map the database to username and password, and it's right in the, there's examples of how to walk you through that.
Just real quick, related to that, external access.
Yeah.
Authenticate, what about pushing? Like, I want to be able to perform an external action depending on what I see on an incoming packet. You mentioned you can build that blacklist yourself. What if instead I want to be able to send a message to my edge router saying, just make a new ACL saying drop this IP, the source IP on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, so the HTable is an easy way of doing it, and you saw it's just a command that says, hey, add this to HTable. Well, right underneath that, before I exit out of the program, I could go, all right, here's a script to run, or here's an API to send out, and you could do whatever. So I could write it to a log. I could send it to a database and log it there, and then have a trigger in the database work with whatever I need to, or I can run a command that then writes it in my router, that opens up a SSH connection to the Cisco and drops it at the router level.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I was just wondering if you could maybe go over a few key differences between Kamailio and OpenSIPs.
All right, then my least favorite question, but you still get a cookie. What are the differences between Kamailio and OpenSIP? There's a few letters that are different. No, at its essence, if you looked at the contributors for OpenSIPs and Kamailio, a lot of them are shared because of the mutual project that started it all, which was OpenSARE, right? And then Kamailio is still that same original project. That's had a lot of development since the fork happened. So for example, if you looked at like the dispatcher module in OpenSIPs, that's written by the person that's sitting 2 seats away from you, who's with Kamailio. So some of those aspects are identical, but that being said, there are some differences in the projects that's happened, in the last 4 or 5 years. For me personally, just with those advancements, and since that time, the SARE product, which was not the open version, but the SARE product has combined with Kamailio, and just the changes to the project there. I mean, to me personally, it is just a vast difference, and so that's why I'm very happy here. But as in choosing Asterisk versus FreeSwitch, the bottom line is it's whichever one you feel more comfortable with. But for me, the amount of development that's occurred in the last 10 years with Kamailio is just astronomical. Thank you very much.
All right, let's all get.
All right, and I have.
Great round of applause.